Catcher in the Rye, Chapter 2, a 30-minute read-along. The last time we read Chapter 1. In this chapter, we learned a few things. We learned Holden is going to tell us about his madman stuff that led to him being in the hospital. So this book is almost written directly to us saying, hey, let me tell you about this madman stuff. Then he tells us it started a day before Christmas break, so we kind of get placed into the story. We're saying, okay, it's day before Christmas break, everybody's about to leave, and he lost his team's foils or swords and ruined their fencing match. So right before he's going on break, he ruins their fencing match. He's not on the team; he's the team manager. And then we learned that he climbed up to the top of the hill where he can see over this big football game, and he's trying to get a goodbye of the place. He thinks he's never going to come back here. And at the end of the chapter, he tells us he went to visit Mr. Spencer, his teacher. So here I'm having a moment of contrast with Holden, whereas I'm seeing how I'm different than him in that I don't I've never been to a teacher to say goodbye before, I don't think. I've definitely never gone over to a teacher's house just to say bye. So I'm wondering what this relationship is like with Holden and Mr. Spencer. So I'm wondering, have you ever had a relationship like that with a teacher? Like if you left school, you'd have to go say bye to them. And why is that? And then I'm wondering, what do you think this relationship between Holden and Spencer is like? Why would he have to go say bye to him? And based on that, what do you think's going to happen in this chapter? In other words, what could be interesting about going to see a teacher to say goodbye? Like what could happen that would be interesting to a story in a story? All right, here we go with chapter 2. They each had their own room and all. They were both around 70 years old, and even more than that. Okay, so we're in Mr. and Mrs. Spencer's house. We know they're pretty old. I'm going to start picturing the house of some old people I know. Okay, I've got specific people in my mind. My family friend Shirley, and she's pretty old, and so her house looks like an old person's house to me. So I'm picturing a house like that where this scene's going to take place. They got a bang out of things, though, in a half-assed way, of course. I know that sounds mean to say, but I don't mean it mean. I just mean that I used to think about old Spencer quite a lot. And if you thought about him too much, you wondered what the heck he was living for. I mean, he was all stooped over and he had very terrible posture. And in class, whenever he dropped a piece of chalk on the blackboard, some guy in the first row always had to pick it up or get up and pick it up and hand it to him. That's awful, in my opinion. But if you thought about him just enough and not too much, you could figure it out that he wasn't doing too bad for himself. For instance, one Sunday, when some other guys and I were over there for hot chocolate, he showed us this beat up Navajo blanket that he and Mrs. Spencer bought off some Indian in Yellowstone Park. You could tell old Spencer got a big bang out of buying it. That's what I mean. You take somebody old as hell, like Mr. Spencer, and they can get a big bang out of buying a blanket. His door was open, but I sort of knocked on it anyway, just to be polite and all. I could see where he was sitting. He was sitting in a big leather chair, all wrapped up in the blanket. I could just, all right, the blanket I just told you about. And he looked over at me when I knocked. "Who's that?" he yelled. "Caulfield, come in, boy." He was always yelling outside of class. It got on your nerves sometimes. 1 minute in, I was sort of sorry he had come. He was reading the Atlantic Monthly, and there were pills and medicines all over the place, and everything smelled like Vicks nose drops. It was pretty depressing. I'm not too crazy about sick people anyway. What made it even more depressing, old Spencer had on this very sad, ratty old bathrobe he was probably born in or something. I don't much like to see old guys in their pajamas and bathrobes anyway. Their bumpy old chests are always showing, and their legs, old guys' legs, at beaches, at places, always look so white and unhairy. "Hello, sir," I said. "I got your note. Thanks a lot." He'd written me this note asking me to stop by and say goodbye before vacation started, on account of I wasn't coming back. You didn't even have to do all that. I'd have come to say goodbye anyway. All right, so as Holden is telling us about Spencer, his teacher, we're learning about Spencer. We're also learning about Holden. We're learning what type of guy Spencer is. We're learning what type of guy Holden is. It really depends on, how we see people in the world as well. So at this point, I'm wondering, what type of guy is Spencer to you, and what type of guy is Holden to you? All right. So a few things you want to be thinking about when you answer this question is you want to be thinking about how Spencer's very old, but he gets a big bang out of things, which means he gets really excited about little things. And we know that um, Holden said that's kind of mean to say. And he also says that um, he get that Spencer gets on his nerves because he yells a lot, and then he also describes Spencer's body as being pretty gross. Like he just doesn't want to see this guy. He's old, he's sick, doesn't want to be there at all. But Spencer wrote him a note to ask to visit, so that's why he's visiting, right? So I'm wondering, you know, who's Spencer making you think of, or like, do you think seems like a good teacher, a bad teacher? What do you think about Spencer, as a teacher here, or as like a guy? And then I want to know, what are you thinking of Holden now that now you've seen him um, say this about his teacher, and kind of complain about him being so gross. Does that change how you think about Holden at all? That like this guy's getting on his nerves for shouting, um, for getting a big bang out of things, and then he's just kind of gross and he doesn't want to be around him. Have a seat there, boy, old Spencer said. He meant the bed. I sat down on it. How's your gripe, sir? My boy, if I felt any better, I'd have to send for the doctor, old Spencer said. That knocked him out. He started chuckling like a madman. Then he finally straightened himself out and said, why aren't you down at the game? I thought this was the day of the big game. It is. I was, only I got back from New York with the fencing team, I said. Boy, his bed was hard as a rock. He started getting serious as hell. I knew he would. So you're leaving us, eh? He said. Yes, sir, I guess I am. He started going into this nodding routine. You never saw anybody nod so much in your life as old Spencer did. You never knew if he was nodding a lot because he was thinking at all, or just because he was a nice old guy that didn't know his ass from his elbow. What did Dr. Thurmer say to you, boy? I understand you had quite a little chat. Yes, we did. We really did. I was in his office around 2 hours, I guess. What did he say to you? Oh, well, about life, being a game and all, and how you got to play it according to the rules. He was pretty nice about it. I mean, he didn't hit the ceiling or anything. He just kept talking about life being a game and all. Oh, life is a game, boy. Life is a game that one plays according to the rules. Yes, sir, I know it is. I know it. Game my ass. Some game. If you get this side where all the hot shots are, then it's a game, all right. I'll admit that. But if you get the other side where there aren't any hot shots, then what's a game about it? Nothing. No game. Has Dr. Thurmer written to my parents yet? Or has Dr. Thurmer written to your parents yet? Old Spencer asked me. He said he was going to write them Monday. Have you yourself communicated with them? No, sir, I haven't communicated with them because I'll probably see them Wednesday night when I get home. How do you think they'll take the news? Well, they'll be pretty irritated about it, I said. They really will. This is about the fourth school I've gone to. I shook my head. I shake my head quite a lot. Boy, I said. I always say boy quite a lot. Partly because I have a lousy vocabulary, and partly because I act quite young for my age sometimes. I was 16 then, I'm 17 now. Sometimes I act like I'm 13. It's really ironical because I'm 6'2.5" and I have gray hair. I really do. One side of my head, the right side, is full of a million gray hairs. I've had them ever since I was a kid. And I still act sometimes like I was only about 12. Everybody says that, especially my father. It's partly true too, but it isn't all true. People always think something's all true. I don't give a damn, except that I get bored sometimes when people tell me to act my age. Sometimes I act a lot older than I am, I really do. But people never notice it. People never notice anything. All right, so I find it really interesting this time around reading this book that Holden sees himself as very young compared to his peers. He's mentions here he's getting kicked out of his. This is his fourth school he's gone to. That's a pretty big shock to me too. But then I'm also really interested in how he's saying he's 17 now. In the story, so he's like writing this as 17. In the story, he's 16. But he says that he sometimes acts 13 and sometimes see him as being like 12, even though he's really tall and looks a lot older. So I'm wondering, do you connect to that at all? Do you see yourself as older or younger than you really are? And do you think people see you as older or younger than you really are? Like, are you someone who's more mature for your age, or are you someone who can be kind of young for your age sometimes? And based on that, based on being someone who's either older or younger than you really are, um, what do you know about Holden that some other people reading this might not know? Having had that experience, what do you maybe know about Holden uh, acting so much younger than he is, or being seen as so much younger than he really is? What do you know about him that maybe someone else might not know? Old Spencer just started nodding again. He also started picking his nose. He made out like he was only pinching it, but he was really getting the old thumb in there. I guess he thought it was all right to do because it was only me that was in the room. I don't care, except that's pretty disgusting to watch somebody pick their nose. Then he said, I had the privilege of meeting your mother and dad when they had their little chat with Dr. Thurber weeks ago. They're grand people. Oh, yes, they are. They're very nice. Grand. There's a word I really hate. It's phony. I could puke every time I hear it. Something sharp as a tack. Or I'm sorry, every time I hear it. Then all of a sudden, old Spencer looked like he had something very good, something sharp as a tack to say to me. He sat up more in his chair and sort of moved around. It was a false alarm, though. All he did was lift the Atlantic Monthly off his lap and try to chuck it on the bed next to me. He missed. It was only about 2 inches away, and he missed anyway. I got up and picked it up and put it on the bed. All of a sudden, then, I wanted to get the hell out of that room. I could feel a terrific lecture coming on. I didn't mind the idea so much, but I didn't feel like being lectured to and smell Vic's nose rubs and look at old Spencer in his pajamas and bathrobe all at the same time. I really didn't. It started all right. What's the matter with you, boy? Old Spencer said. He said it pretty tough, too, for him. How many subjects did you carry this term? 5, sir. 5? And how many are you failing in? 4. I moved my ass a little bit on the bed. It was the hardest bed I'd ever sat on. I passed English all right, I said, because I had all that Beowulf and Lord Randall, my son stuff, when I was in the Wooten school. I mean, I didn't have to do any work in English at all, hardly, except write compositions once in a while. He wasn't even listening. He hardly ever listened to you when you said something. I flunked you in history because you knew absolutely nothing. I know that, sir. Boy, I know it. You couldn't help it. Absolutely nothing. He said it over again. That's something that drives me crazy when people say something twice that way after you admit it the first time. Then he said it 3 times. Absolutely nothing. I doubt very much if you even opened your textbooks even once the whole term. Did you? Tell me the truth, oh boy. Well, I sort of glanced through it a couple of times. I told him I didn't want to hurt his feelings. He was mad about history. You glanced through it, eh? He said, very sarcastic. Your exam paper is over there on the top of my chiffonier. just his dresser, right? On the top of an old pile. Bring it here, please. It was a very dirty trick, but I went over and brought it to him. I didn't have any alternative or anything. Then I sat down on a cement bed again. Boy, you can't imagine how sorry I was that I'd stopped to say goodbye to him. He started handling my exam paper like it was a turd or something. We studied the Egyptians from November 4th to December 2nd, he said. You chose to write about them for the optional essay question. Would you care to hear what you had to say? No, sir, not very much, I said. He read it anyway, though. You can't stop a teacher when they want to do something, they just do it. The Egyptians were an ancient race of Caucasians residing in one of the northern sections of Africa. The latter, as we all know, is the largest continent in the Eastern Hemisphere. I had to sit there and listen to this crap. It was a dirty trick. In this part, I'm thinking that it's interesting that he's calling his own essay crap. And it's also interesting that he's reading this out loud to him. I'm wondering, like, why would the teacher be reading his own essay out loud to him? The Egyptians are extremely interesting to us today for various reasons. Modern science would still like to know what the secret ingredients were that the Egyptians used when they wrapped up dead people so that their faces would not rot for innumerable centuries. This interesting riddle is still quite a challenge to modern science in the 20th century. He stopped reading and put my paper down. I was beginning to sort of hate him. Your essay, shall we say, ends there, he said in this very sarcastic voice. You wouldn't think such an old guy would be so sarcastic and all. However, you dropped me a little note at the bottom of the page, he said. I know I did, I said. I said it very fast because I wanted to stop him before he started reading out loud again. But she couldn't stop him. He was hot as a firecracker. Dear Mr. Spencer, that is all I know about Egyptians. I can't seem to get very interested in them, although your lectures are very interesting. It is all right with me if you flunk me, though, as I'm flunking everything except English anyway. Respectfully yours, Holden Caulfield. At this point, I'm thinking it's really interesting that Holden would tell his teacher, it's okay if you flunk me. You don't have to feel bad for flunking me. Like, he's flunking his own subjects, but he's worried about his teacher's feelings. That's weird to me. This is another moment where I'm seeing some contrast between myself and Holden. I'm not sure that I would feel bad for my teacher while I'm the one failing a class or something. Something's happening to me. So here I'm wondering, are you more like Holden or are you more like me in this situation? So like if you were in Holden's shoes, do you think that you would also be feeling bad about how the teacher's feeling in this situation? Or do you think you'd be more concerned with your own situation? You wouldn't be thinking so much about that the teacher's going to feel bad about flunking me. He put my goddamn paper down then and looked at me like he'd just beaten the hell out of me at ping pong or something. I don't think I'll ever forgive him for reading that crap out loud. I wouldn't have read it out loud to him if he'd written it. I really wouldn't. In the first place, I'd only written that damn note so he wouldn't feel too bad about flunking me. Do you blame me for flunking you, boy? He said. No, sir, I certainly don't. I said. I wish to hell he'd stop calling me boy all the time. He tried chucking my exam paper on the bed when he was through with it. Only he missed again, naturally. I had to get up again and pick it up and put it on the top of Atlantic Monthly. It's boring to do that every 2 minutes. What would you have done in my place? He said. Tell the truth, boy. Well, you could see he really felt pretty lousy about flunking me. So I shot the bull for a while. I told him I was a real moron and all that stuff. I told him how I wouldn't have done or would have done the exact same thing if I'd been in his place. And how most people didn't appreciate how tough it is being a teacher. That kind of stuff. The old bull. The funny thing is, though, I was sort of thinking about something else while I shot the bull. I live in New York, and I was thinking about the lagoon in Central Park, down near Central Park South. I was wondering if it would be frozen over when I got home. And if it was, where'd the ducks go? I was wondering where the ducks went when the lagoon got all icy and frozen over. I wondered if some guy came in a truck and took them away to the zoo or something, or if they just flew away. So at this point, I'm thinking Holden's quite a daydreamer. He's talking to his teacher, listening to his teacher, and this whole time he's thinking about where do the ducks go when the pond freezes over. So he's thinking about completely different things. He's really having trouble focusing on the conversation, it seems like. I'm lucky though. I mean, I could shoot the old bull with old Spence and think about those ducks at the same time. It's funny. You don't have to think too hard when you talk to a teacher. All of a sudden, though, he interrupted me while I was shooting the bull. He was always interrupting you. How do you feel about all this, boy? I'd be interested to know. Very interested. You mean about my flunking out of Pensy and all? I said. I sort of wished he'd cover up his bumpy chest. It wasn't such a beautiful view. If I'm not mistaken, I believe you also had some difficulty at the Wooten School at the Elkton Hills. He didn't say it just sarcastic, but sort of nasty too. I didn't have too much difficulty at Elkton Hills. I told him I didn't exactly flunk out or anything. I just quit, sort of. Why, may I ask? Why? Oh, well, it's a long story, sir. I mean, it's pretty complicated. I didn't feel like going into the whole thing with him. He wouldn't have understood it anyway. It wasn't up his alley at all. One of the biggest reasons I left Elkton Hills was because I was surrounded by phonies, that's all. They were coming in the goddamn window. For instance, they had this headmaster, Mr. Haas. That was the phoniest bastard I ever met in my life. 10 times worse than old Dermer. On Sundays, for instance, old Haas went around shaking hands with everybody's parents when they drove up to the school. He'd be charming as hell and all, except if some boys had a little funny looking old parents, you should have seen the way he did with my roommate's parents. I mean, if a boy's mother was sort of fat or corny looking or something, and if somebody's father was one of those guys that wear those suits with the very big shoulders and those corny black and white shoes, and old Hans would just shake hands with them and give them a phony smile, and then he'd go talk, maybe for an hour with somebody else's parents. I can't stand that stuff. It drives me crazy. It makes me so depressed. I go crazy. I hated that goddamn Elkton Hills. Oh man, this is interesting to me that this guy was kind of like, so his old headmaster, who's like a principal, was really like a politician, someone who goes around and, smiles and shakes everybody's hands. But Holden was saying like he really like played favorites with certain people, and it had to do with what seems like wearing nicer clothes or just like looking nicer. And so this guy seemed like, I wouldn't like this guy either, if he seemed very political, but then also was like um, very rude to people based on how they looked or what clothes they wore. So here I'm feeling kind of connected with Holden. I'm like, yeah, I don't really like when people do that either. When people treat people different for their clothes or how they look. Old Spencer asked me something then, but I didn't hear him. I was thinking about old Haas. What, sir? I said. Do you have any particular qualms about leaving Pensy? Oh, I have a few qualms, all right, sure, yeah, but not too many, not yet anyway. I guess it hasn't really hit me yet. It takes things for a while to hit me, and all I'm doing right now is thinking about going home Wednesday. I'm a moron. Do you feel absolutely no concern for your future, boy? Oh, I feel some concern for the future, all right. Sure I do. I thought about it for a minute, but not too much, I guess. Not too much, I guess. You will, Spencer said. You will, old boy. You will when it's too late. I didn't like hearing him say that. It made me sound dead or something. It was very depressing. I guess I will, sir, I said. I'd like to put some sense in that head of yours, boy. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you if I can. He really was too. You could see that. But it was just that we were too much on opposite sides of the pole, that's all. I know you are, sir, I said. Thanks a lot. No kidding, I appreciate it. I really do. I got up from the bed then. Boy, I couldn't have sat there another 10 minutes to save my life. The thing is, though, I have to get going now. I have quite a bit of equipment at the gym I have to take home with me. I really do. He sort of looked up at me and started nodding again, with this very serious look on his face. I felt sorry as hell for him all of a sudden, but I couldn't hang around there any longer, the way we were on opposite sides of the pole. The way he kept missing the bed whenever he chucked something at me, with his sad old bathrobe on his chest showing, and that grippy smell of Vicks nose rub drop all over the place. Look, sir, don't worry about me, I said. I mean it. I'll be all right. I'm just going through a phase right now. Everybody goes through phases and all, don't they? I don't know, boy. I don't know. I hate it when somebody answers that way. Sure they do, I said. I mean it, sir, but please don't worry about me. I sort of put my hand on his shoulder. Okay, I said. Wouldn't you like a cup of hot chocolate before you go? Mrs. Spencer would be, I really would, but the thing is, I have to get going. I have to go right to the gym. Thanks, though. Thanks a lot, sir. We shook hands and all that crap. It made me feel sad as hell, though. I'll drop you a line, sir. Take care with your gripes, sir. Goodbye, boy. After I shut the door and started back down the living room, he yelled something at me, but I couldn't exactly hear him. I'm pretty sure he yelled, "Good luck," at me. I hope to hell not. I'd never yell good luck at somebody. It sounds terrible when you think about it. All right, quick review here before we ask one last question here. And so in chapter 2, not a lot happened, right? It all took place with Mr. Spencer, and it's just happening at his house. So Holden is at Mr. Spencer's house. He's been there before for hot chocolate. Mr. Spencer's very old and very sick. Holden's grossed out by him. Mr. Spencer reads Holden's essay, and it's very bad. In my opinion, it was pretty. I think at that point it's supposed to be pretty bad. And Holden tries to convince him not to feel bad for flunking him. Mr. Spencer says that he has no concern for his future and that he won't until it's too late. So he tells Holden, "You don't have any concern about your future. You won't before it's too late." It doesn't seem like maybe it's just a phase, but I don't think so. Someone's got to talk some sense into you. He's really laying it into him. So here I'm wondering a few things about this relationship. I'm wondering, do you think that they are connected? Do you think they have a special relationship? Do you think there's some sort of connection here with Holden and Mr. Spencer? Like, is this, a favorite teacher and favorite student? Is this a strong bond, a human connection in this world? So I'm wondering, do you think that? And do you think that Spencer is being a good teacher in the way he's trying to talk sense into him? Do you like Mr. Spencer for the way he's talking to him, or do you hate some of the things he's doing? Do you think he's being rude and over the top? You might want to connect this to past experiences with other teachers or other times you've been lectured, where you either really appreciated it and you said, I do think they were trying to help me out. Or maybe you really hated the way that person talked to you. And that's going to shape how you see Mr. Spencer. What I'm really wondering here is, do you think Spencer is a good guy? Do you think he has a strong bond with Holden? And do you think he's doing the right thing in the way he's talking to him? I'm also really interested in the way that Mr. Spencer kind of gives this warning. This kind of reminds me of in a horror movie or any sort of movie where something bad happens. Sometimes at the beginning you have like this person who's saying something bad's about to happen. A lot of times in horror movies that's an older person who gives a warning. This comes from a lot of like tragedies too, a lot of tragic plays that we saw like in Greece. But you have some sort of person giving this like warning, like something really bad's about to happen. And that's what that feels like to me, where he says you're going to realize that you need to have concern for your future, but it's going to be too late. So here instead, you might also want to make a prediction here. What do you think that means? Like, how could it be too late to be concerned about your future? So like, what do you think is going to happen in the book?